The college football bracket picks are in, and I've got lead bracket reporter Wayne Stats and college football analyst Stan Becton here to talk through the data. Stats, of the 12 teams in contention, who is the most popular champion pick so far?
Yeah, so of course this is before brackets lock. This is as of December 10th, so things can change on the margins a little bit. We'll see if the order changes, but right now Indiana is the top pick at 28.79%, number one overall seed, so not too shocking. But Ohio State is second at 24%, so not a huge gap, but still a noticeable cushion there for Indiana as a number one overall seed getting picked the most to win, which isn't shocking. We see that in March Madness. Oftentimes, number one overall seed or a number one seed is usually picked the most. But Indiana being the team that's the most picked in 2025, we should talk about this more. That Indiana is the most popular team to win a college football championship.
And that's interesting you say that, Stats, because last year's number one team lost their first game. And it's not like March Madness where, the 1 versus 16 is typically guaranteed for the one. So that's a big thing. People aren't taking in the past data that we have from 1 year only into account.
Yeah, I think some of that was the 8 last year being Ohio State, I think was a little tough one for Oregon.
Okay, I want to look at Texas Tech, the number 4 team. They have the bye, and they are one of the top teams, but their data is a little skewed compared to Indiana, Ohio State, and Georgia. Tell us about it, Wayne.
Yeah, so like you just said, Kat, Indiana, Ohio State, and Georgia are 1, 2, and 3 in terms of getting picked to win it all. Combined, about 75%. So 3/4 of brackets are going with one of those 3 teams to win it all. So Texas Tech is 4th, like you said, the number 4 seed, one of the 4 teams with the buys, but they're getting picked below 7.5%. So there's a huge gap there of teams getting, the top 4 teams are the top 4 picks, but there's that large margin between the top 3 and number 4 Texas Tech. Could be a combination of a few things. Indiana is number 1 overall seed, so that's going to be a popular thing to happen. But also Ohio State and Georgia are Ohio State and Georgia. They've won championships before. And Texas Tech is kind of like the cool kid, kind of like Indiana in a way, like the cool new kid coming out on the block that's not the number one seed, but still has that bye.
Stan, do any of these picks surprise you or change your perspective on any of these games, the top 4 seeds?
I'm surprised that Texas Tech is only, getting the percentage of votes that they are receiving, because they had a strong season, especially when it comes to how they finished the season in that Big 12 championship, just dominating BYU. You would think that some of the fans see that and they're like, oh, maybe they can keep this train rolling. They got a lot of Texas Tech fans that can travel pretty well. And then you had some great big wins, but apparently not. They think when they get to go play those big dogs that are the top 3 seeds, it all ends for them. So
I was going to say, I'm kind of curious if Texas Tech was called, Texas or Alabama in that 4 spot, if they'd be picked a little more than that. Just an idea.
Okay, well, Wayne, you mentioned Alabama. Let's talk about them. Where are you seeing them in your bracket data?
Yeah, so in terms of teams getting picked at a higher rate above what their seeding says they should be picked at, Alabama isn't the first one. So Alabama is the 9 seed, but they're getting picked the 6th most in terms of winning the championship. Now, we're still talking, once you get past the top 3, the margins are much closer together. It's not like Alabama is getting picked by half the brackets, because that's not possible. They are getting picked to win about 3.66%, which is, again, the 6th most popular pick so far, and they're the 9 seed. Probably for a few reasons. One, a lot of Alabama fans. The other one is people just default picking Alabama because it's Alabama. We see this in March Madness with Duke. If Duke always gets or usually gets picked higher than even when they're a lower seed, for them like a 2 or 3, and then instead of a 1, they're still going to get picked pretty high. Or North Carolina was a very popular pick last year, even though they were in the first 4, because it's North Carolina. So, teams that people are familiar with, that casual fans or people who know or even knowledgeable fans know that, oh, I know this team, they do really well, I'm going to go with them. Now, again, we're still talking 3.66%, so it's not like we're saying a lot of people are picking Alabama to win, but they're getting picked above what the seed lines say they probably would be picked at.
And Alabama doesn't have those big brands that they'll have to face beyond Oklahoma, and that's a team that they barely lost to start with that one. Then they have Indiana. That's not a big brand like we mentioned earlier. Then they could play a Texas Tech or Oregon or anybody like that. And that's like, okay, Alabama has the most name recognition. We've seen what they've done back when they had Nick Saban. Of course, this is a different coach with Kalen DeBoer, so we don't know what they're going to do because they haven't made the playoffs with him before. But you do have that past experience that all the fans can look. Hey, they were winning natties every other year back when they had Nick Saban. What's to say they aren't going to do it this year in the first year that we have our bracket challenge game, in the first year that they made the playoffs?
Okay, I want to go to the first round and see what the data says about the closest in pick margin. What game are you seeing that might be decided by a flip of a coin?
Yeah, so probably not too surprising. It is, in fact, the 8-9 game between two teams that have played already before in a very close game. That's Alabama at Oklahoma. Oklahoma is getting picked at 50.24%. So subtract from 100. That's 49.76 for Alabama. So pretty much a coin flip, which is kind of, Oklahoma is the home team and they beat Alabama, yet it's almost 50-50. Like we said, Alabama, not that Oklahoma is not a brand name, of course, but Alabama is a different level, I think, of familiarity for a lot of people. And we know with Heisman, candidates usually every year. So I think brand name is strong with Alabama for that one. But again, it is 8-9, so it makes sense that that's the closest pick. Just for comparison, the biggest margin is 5 versus 12. So again, that makes sense. Oregon's picked to win 92.9% of the time, and James Madison 7.1% of the time. So if JMU does pull that upset, a lot of people's brackets will go bye-bye.
How's the numbers looking with that other rematch? We got Ole Miss and Tulane. How's that compare to the rematch where it's almost a 50-50 coin flip for Oklahoma, Alabama, but then you have Ole Miss and Tulane that have another rematch? Is that 50-50?
No.
Oh.
Ole Miss is getting picked at 86.64%. So that means Tulane's at 13.36. So pretty big margin there. It's they've played before. It's at Ole Miss, which is going to be crazy there. People are curious how they're going to look, of course, with the new head coach. I'm kind of curious. It reminds me if it's closer than it was in the regular season, just because it was such a blowout. But playoff time, you never know. But I think the numbers aren't too surprising in terms of like the order, in terms of the most popular or least popular, upset pick, if you want to say, for the first round by seed. But still, it's the gaps between them. We're talking huge margins here between 8 versus 9 versus 5 versus 12 than you normally see in March Madness, for example.
Well, moving on to the quarterfinals, are the top four teams with buys, are they moving on and advancing to the semis, or are there any surprises or upsets?
Yeah, so all 4 of the teams with buys are getting picked to advance on more than half of brackets. Although Texas Tech, as you probably could guess, they're the least picked of those 4, but they're still in the semifinals on 57, almost 58% of brackets. So it's not like people aren't picking them. It's just that just like in terms of picking a champion, the top 3 are just really popular to advance out the semifinals. So for example, Georgia is actually the most popular team to make the semifinals at 84.59%. Probably some of that's just the matchup. Like we said, Alabama is a popular fourth seed upset pick, so Indiana is going to naturally be a little lower to make it out. But still, that's still 79% of picking Indiana to win. Again, that's like no one's picking Indiana versus Alabama. Just that it just interesting things when the margins are so close. You can see teams getting flipped in terms of where you think they would be based off seed expectation.
And that's another rematch that you could have with Ole Miss and Georgia. It's surprising that the fans are saying one rematch with the team that won that game and they're playing at home is 50-50, but then all of these other rematches are blowouts. It's like, hey, let's keep it consistent here, fans. Let's keep it consistent as we fill out these brackets, man.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, consistency has been an interesting topic this year in college football.
For sure.
There's still some time to fill out your own bracket on NCAA.com's new college football bracket challenge game before Friday, December 19th, when the first round begins.